Mass Bay, and he's given some wonderful speeches, and it'd be really nice to hear from him probably. So I reached out to him, and within about 3 minutes, we had decided that this was something he'd be open to be doing. And I am very grateful. I've seen a little bit of the preview of this, and it looks like you're going to have a wonderful set of potential sales for everyone. If we can ever get out there and sail with one another as the summer gets going, give you some ideas to plan. So with that, I'm going to introduce Brad from North Sales, and it's all you, sir.
Okay, can you see my screen now?
Have you shared it yet?
Okay, hang on.
And you may want everyone to go to, instead of having it on gallery view, to have speaker view now, so that you're able to see it better. That'll help you out.
Where did I go? Why did I leave the meeting? Oh, shoot. Bear with me.
You're still in. All you gotta do is share the screen.
Share.
Nice models behind you, Brad.
Oh, thanks. Share.
Should be the green button at the bottom, middle.
I don't have a green button at the bottom middle.
Move your mouse down near the bottom, it should pop up.
No.
I joined late. Did we talk about this weekend's cruise?
We only said that it was. You can, why don't you give us the details while we're setting up?
Okay. Peg Palmer, Fleet Captain Social has organized a cruise to Redbrook. Currently, there are 4 boats. Brian Herr, and with crew of Ellen O'Connell and Anne. Then there's Peg with her kids. Then there's I'm bringing Patty Correa, and I think Gene Nuss is going to join us. I don't know who his crew is, but it's at Redbrook. And if anybody's interested, give Peg Palmer an email or a shout out, and it should be really fun.
Can you see it now?
Oh,
No.
I just went to the share on the.
when you click on share, Brad, then your whatever windows you have open are, and you should click on that. Then down in the bottom right-hand corner, it should say share.
You can also try Alt S, Brad.
Yeah.
Hang on. Okay, I've got a screen that's showing you guys. I want to share it.
There we are.
You guys better?
Yep.
North Sales, I've heard of them.
How's that? Does that help?
Yeah.
Hey,
You guys got it. Cool. Sorry for the delay. I'm better at speaking than I am negotiating all these things. So, first of all, thank you, Chris, for helping organize this. When you called, it was easy to say yes. I have spoken to Pelagic a couple of times in many years in the past. So I don't know if any of you guys go back that long, but you know, I believe in your mission. I think it's great, get people together to go sailing. I've been so lucky all my life to participate in the sport on varying levels, from cruising to racing, local level, international level, world-class level. And I've been working in the industry pretty much since I left college. I did a quick stint in a bank that didn't really work for me, but that's just, you know, the way it goes. So I'm going to proceed ahead, and we're going to pick on all the little harbors and just my memories growing up and how it was and the places I went and some of the cool things that I was able to see and do. I noticed one guy there's up in the Isles of Shoals. That's a great little spot. First time I went up there was last summer, so that was super fun. But mostly inside the Mass Bay area. Did a lot of sailing in Boston Harbor. And so we're going to start with down there in Provincetown and just kind of go through it. I'm sure many of you have been there. And I'll be honest, I actually haven't except by land. And it is very high on my priority list to get there this summer, especially after listening to a couple of my buddies talk about it, who said it's just such a great place. They talked about the trip to Provincetown and sailing over Stellwagen and seeing the whales, and just the marine life is just amazing. And it's one thing that I've found in the last few years after all the racing I did was that it's time to kick back a little bit and just have some fun and just explore some more areas with my family and enjoy the water and the boat for just being out there, because it's a special place. I know there are some people that aren't launching this summer. I think that's really a shame. I think that the whole virus thing is a real shakeup to all of us. But I think it's also important to move forward and to try and make the best of the situation. And to me, the boats are one of the best ways we can do that. It's also no secret that if you can put your boat in the water, it's actually better to exercise it than it is to leave it on the hard. So if it's at all possible to encourage anybody to launch their boat, get out on it and sail around a little bit. It doesn't have to be any great grand, journey or anything, but just to be out and enjoy it. So we're going to start with Provincetown, loop through Mass Bay, and we'll end up in Rockport and in the Annisquam, Gloucester area. Obviously, this is an aerial view of Provincetown. It is beautiful. There's no doubt about it. Our waters are just a treasured place. In the center of the picture, you can see the big marina, the docks there. And going into town, and this is according to my buddies, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. There are kind of two different parts to the town. I hear that the left side, if you walk onto the dock and you turn left, you find the more artsy, craftsy side of it, which is supposed to be a ton of fun. And then the higher end, sort of fancy smancy stuff is over on the right. The Lobster Pot is a sort of a landmark. It's a noted place that's supposed to have good food. So that's supposed to be a lot of fun to go to. And just all the different shops and so on. J.B. Braun had a kind of a neat thing. He started taking his family down there years ago. And every year they had a caricature done by one of the notable artists right on the street. So they've got a kind of a log of their kids growing up and their times there. So they've kind of got a treasure chest of just these memories of going to Provincetown. Jack talked about going to the art side and the artists that do fabulous paintings of horizons and the seascapes and so on. So it really is kind of a neat sounding destination. My wife Janet and I are planning on getting out there this summer, maybe even 4th of July weekend. I think it'll be a blast, a total blast. Coming up the bay, kind of across the bay, we get to Clark's Island in Duxbury. This is kind of an unfound gem in that there is good anchoring there. The water's pretty deep. The island itself is privately owned, but you can arrange to get a tour of it. And there's some neat history on it about the people that settled in the area. And maybe this is one of those places that some people think the Pilgrims actually landed first. So, it's kind of a neat place to see. It's tucked inside of the point there, so it's not that hard to get to. And, there's just fun stuff to look at, poke around, walk around. Of course, if you go into Plymouth Harbor itself, you can't miss the Mayflower. And if you go, it really is kind of a neat show to go on board the boat and get a flavor for the actors that are on board are just a riot. They will not come out of character. And they poke along and they do their thing and they talk to you and they answer your questions. And it's really quite an interesting sort of living museum. Many of you probably know that the Mayflower went through a major reconstruction. And this year they were planning on a big hoorah to bring it back to the dock and open it up. And of course, that's all been sort of quieted down. But I'm sure that if you go down there by boat or whatever, you'll be able to poke around and see what's going on. And then, of course, you get into Plymouth and, you know, not too far off the docks and stuff, there's fun shops, there's decent eateries, places you can poke around. So it's a nice walk if you've been on the boat for 5 hours or something. It's kind of a reasonable place to walk around and get a little exercise, see Plymouth Rock, see the Mayflower. And of course you can get, you know, the saltwater taffy and stuff like that. There's kind of fun. Coming up the coast a little bit further, we get to Scituate. Oh, one quick story about Plymouth, I want to back up on that real quick, is that my uncle, many years ago, actually got shipwrecked out there on a schooner he was trying to deliver south in November. And a snowstorm came up, and his name was Fred White, and the boat's name was Snow Maiden. And it was about a 60-foot schooner, and they ended up caught on a sandbar in the middle of the night. And luckily he didn't die, but he almost did. He got found by a fisherman. He was in the water, and tragedy there, personal tragedy. But Uncle Fred lived and went on to own a boatyard, which is in Cohasset. We'll get to that in a little while. The Scituate is another one of my favorites. I think it's first of all, it's so easy to get in and out of. The people there are so friendly. There's no pretensions in Scituate. I just find it a very nice, relaxing place. In the picture here, this aerial view, you can see the lighthouse, Scituate Light, in the bottom left. There's Peggotty Beach that's right along there, and this, of course, the seawall. Who doesn't like walking along a seawall and just kicking around and seeing some of the stuff that's there? It's always entertaining. If you've got younger members in your party, grandchildren or what, it's so special to be able to take a young person and just walk along the edge of the water. We know that. We did it when we were young, and that's part of what got us addicted to this sailing thing. And so this town, Scituate, when you get in there, like I said, they're really friendly. They usually have some moorings to let. And there's the inner harbor and the outer harbor. I like the outer harbor. It's a little more open. There's a little more breeze. And you're pretty close. The launch service is very good. There are a couple of restaurants right on the water that are decent to eat at. Fun walk through town. Then walk through town. It's right there. Easy to walk around and see what's going on. And just friendly people. You know, I think that's one of the best things. I think if I remember, there's a pretty good ice cream shop there too. So I think one of the things you could make as a mission is to check out and find out what the best ice cream shop in Mass Bay is, just by going to all the different harbors. The Scituate is a pretty neat spot. It's got a lot going on there. So worth a visit if you haven't been. There's the lighthouse, which had some role in the Revolutionary War. I'm sure my father told me about it, but I don't remember. But one of the things was in 1954, there was a hurricane, and the oil container ship, the Trusco, got washed up on that beach. I think it was 1954, and got washed up on the beach right there by the lighthouse, high and dry. And Dad, being curious and kind of the way he was, he lived in Scituate at the time, and he actually went down with the Jeep and was talking to the guys and kind of got himself wrapped up in helping them haul that thing off. They had to wait till they get some big tugboats in the next high tide, but pretty wild to see a big ship right there on the beach in front of the harbor. This is Minot's Light. Picture obviously during a storm. I went by it last Friday. It was much calmer. And having grown up in Cohasset, one of the sort of rites of passage was to climb the ladder on the left and go up and check out the light. You get to the door, it's of course locked. But you never went out there on a day like this. That was too nasty to try and get into the light, but it makes for spectacular pictures. And in the winter, you used to go to down to the waterfront and see the lighthouse was just all coated in ice. It was just so pretty. The original lighthouse was an iron kind of post and tubular column thing. And it went down in the gale of the gale that took down the Portland Light ship. I think it was a gale of 1898. And there were two guys taking care of the lighthouse. One's last name was Simeon, and the other one's last name, I think, was Antone. And they sent out, if the story is right, one of the guys was sending a note out by flashing the light to his wife on shore, was the 143 flash that came from the lighthouse. And eventually the waves took over the lighthouse and wiped it out. And when the new light was built, that became its flash, which I think most of you know, 1, then 4, then 3. And that's supposedly the story about why it started to flash that way. The lighthouse itself was built of granite carved in Gloucester and actually put together on shore right at the head of Cohasset Harbor. There's a like a museum there, little open museum, where they cut and kind of puzzle piece the pieces together with the idea that every time a wave hits, the structure gets stronger and stronger. So it's a massive, massive piece, and it's really beautiful to look at. So it's there for a long, long time. It's not going to go away. Cohasset Harbor is small. It's a little tricky to get into if you've got much draft at all. Go in at high tide or about an hour before high tide as it's flooding. You see the yacht club has the docks right there in the front. That was my turf growing up, and we used to actually walk from there. When I was a bad kid, I'd walk from there along the shore all the way along Cohasset Shore to Hull. It was just a day-long adventure. I can't tell you how much fun it was. On the left side of the screen is Bassett's Beach, and that was a fun place to go. You could row over there and go over there and kick the sand around, walk out on the jetty that's out there. Again, just poking around and seeing stuff with little kids. It's just a terrific thing. At the head of the harbor, let me see if I can point this out to you. We'll do this. Up here at the head of the harbor is the old boatyard that my uncle owned, and then my father and some friends owned that for a little while. And so when I was growing up, I hung out there a lot and used to scamper around underneath it. They had wheels, water wheels, that used to power the tools up in the shed. So that was really exciting and fun. And then if you're looking for a fun walk, here's where they cut the granite blocks right here on the shore by the town pier. And up here at the top, there's a trail that goes up to a big rock at the head of the harbor. And you can look down, it's got to be 150 or so feet high. It's a beautiful place to sit. And you can see all around and just kind of take in the scenery. Back in the day, there used to be lots of schooners in Cohasset. There was quite a fishing fleet in there. This point right here is a restaurant. It used to be called the Hugo's Lighthouse. It's now one of the chain restaurants. I can't remember which one. And over here at this head of the harbor is another restaurant that actually is the waitress there, the head waitress was a gal I grew up with. So it's a really small harbor. It's quaint. It's nice to get into and fun places to see there. This is called Whitehead. It's at the mouth of the harbor. So we're heading out of the harbor and it's on the left now. It's owned by a guy I actually grew up playing hockey with down there. And I delivered his boat down from Manchester to the harbor last weekend. He did some dredging here and built this pier. It wasn't quite the same when I was growing up. It was a different house. It was kind of it was a brick place. And having grown up in the area, I was sometimes known to have kind of gone near the house and found the pool and things like that. So it was a great place to kind of scamper around and we didn't get into trouble because we ran fast. I think that's the best way to put it. We're going to come up the shore a little bit further and we're going to get to Nantasket Beach, which is on the left. You can't go in there, but around the corner through Hull Gut, you come to Hull Harbor, which is right here. This is Hull Bay. This is Hingham Bay over here. So this is kind of the southern end of the Boston Bay, Boston Harbor Islands. And talk about a resource to explore. It is so pretty in there. Hull Bay, very, very protected. You have to come in around here to the left side and cut through the channel. It's pretty well marked. But again, if you got a pretty deep draft boat, it's best to wait until you got about an hour before flood ends, and that'll give you water to get in. Susie Slattery, I'm not sure if she uses her last name, as the manager of the Hull Yacht Club, is there and will help you get a mooring. She's a super fun person and definitely knows her way around. This island here, which is now condos, called Spinnaker Island, was originally a Nike missile base and was all concrete bunkers and stuff like that. And my buddy Jack talks about when he was a kid rowing over and scampering around there and again, didn't get caught because he ran fast. Sailing out of Hull, do watch out. There are ledges and rocks around. They're pretty well marked. I think I've hit most of them when I sailed the 110 out of there, trying to get out of current. This is Bumpkin Island right here. It's got a dock on this side over here, and I believe a couple of moorings over there that you can actually hook up to for a little bit of time and go ashore and walk the trails. We come over here into Hingham, which I'm going to come into again in a little bit. We've got another view of that from the other side. But Hingham Harbor is pretty shallow, especially if you get in here. So you got to be careful. But most of the moorings are out in this area and between these two little islands. The yacht club is right on that point, tucked in there a little bit. The only problem with Hingham, I would say, is that it's pretty far from any downtown. So it's really difficult to walk if you need supplies or anything like that. It's quite a ways to go. One of the cool things about Hingham Bay is this area here, which is World's End. World's End are 3 drumlins that were left by the glaciers. And they were actually considered as a site for the United Nations when they were looking for locations for that whole complex. And they were going to connect World's End to Boston by a series of bridges hopscotching the islands. It certainly would have changed the whole look of the area a lot. So I'm kind of glad they didn't do it. It is a fantastic place to go for a walk and a hike. It's really, really pretty. You can actually bring your boat in here. There's a channel that gets to the backside of Nantasket, and it is shallow in spots. So you better talk to the marina owner, which is right in there. There's a marina in there. But find out where the water's good. It's a worthwhile place to visit. Very quiet, so it's a lot of fun. This is Hull Yacht Club. It is just really basically a yacht club. They've got lots of moorings, very active club on the weekends. There are a lot of people around. Susie Slattery is the manager, so check in with her and she can probably help you out with the mooring. This house back here, many years ago was owned by part of the Kennedy family, so that's sort of a little bit there. Now this is from the other end of Hingham and Hull Bay. Here's Hull way over here. There's Bumpkin Island. This is World's End. And here's Hingham. So the Hingham Yacht Club is right here. To come into the inner harbor, you'd have to come through here, cut through these 2 islands, and way around this side, you can see these boats coming in as well. There is a channel, but again, deep draft boat, I draw 6 feet. I'm not going to go in there. Probably could get in, but I'm not going to take a chance. But here is where, if you do come in, there are moorings, and you can walk to downtown. There's a great little restaurant there, right on the corner for sandwiches and so on. Pretty good spot. But you can get a fair amount of road noise from the Rotary, and the Route 3A runs right along here. This is a public beach. You can access that, but believe me, at low tide, this empties out. This whole area is mud. So you don't want to be caught there on a falling tide. We're going to head up toward the other end of Boston Bay. This is Boston Light, beautiful place. There's a dock there you can go up to. You can walk ashore, explore around. It's one of the great entrances in Mass Bay, the Brewster Islands. And here's kind of an overshot of the entire group of islands. Boston Harbor is great fun. Petix Island used to be an Italian prisoner of war camp for officers in the Italian army. They apparently built all kinds of grape arbors and vines and so on. They had a pretty plush program going out there. And as I understand it, with the Harbor Island State Park being rebuilt, it's kind of a fun island to go explore on. There are moorings in this area of Petix and a few little summer cottages along this area of the beach. This is not very good mooring in here. It's all stone. This is Hull Gut right here. There's a lot of current rips through there, so you really need to know what you're doing in that area. There's Bumpkin Island that I mentioned earlier. And these other islands are small. In Hingham, Langley, and Sarah are wonderful spots to take a young kid or even yourself. Just walk around and look at the tide pools and stuff like that. George's Island, one of my favorites, has the fort on it, which is a great take. There are moorings there, and you can pick one up. Best to contact the Boston Harbor Master to get a lowdown on exactly what they're going to do this summer. If you got a skiff, that's clearly going to be one of the best ways to get ashore. Spectacle has been all fixed up. That, of course, was the landing spot for most of the big dig mud that came out of the tunnels. So that's kind of a neat place. And that's actually been made into a really nice walking park as well. So there's so much to see just in Boston Bay. It's incredible. This is a shot of the fort on George's Island. Whoops. As you can see, they've got docks. They've got areas you can come in and bring a skiff or just land the skiff on the beach and pull it up. It can get crowded, but it is a really neat place. They've fixed it up a lot. Boston itself, of course, you can get in there and, of course, walk to Faneuil Hall. And one of the more fun things to do is to find out when the festivals will be held in the North End, because that's always a ton of fun. That's probably going to have a little different tenor this year with the COVID thing going on. So again, probably a good idea to look online and find out what is happening, what you're allowed to do, and make sure. But Boston is a walking town. That whole Kennedy Parkway right on the waterfront is beautiful. People congregate there. They did such a nice job taking down the central artery. So, and of course you got Faneuil Hall and places like that. And that might be where you find the best ice cream in all of Mass Bay, but I don't know. There are a couple other places I'll mention as we go along. We're walking up to Marblehead. I think probably everybody in this group has been to Marblehead. If you haven't, it's a wonderful town. It's got tons of history, a lot of boats. The bigger yacht clubs are on this side. This is Marblehead Neck over here. And you've got the Corinthian Yacht Club, which is right around here. That's the Corinthian. And down here is the Eastern Yacht Club. Down here you got Pleon and Eastern. That's the Eastern Dock. Those are, they're pretty exclusive to members. Across the harbor, you got the Boston Yacht Club, the Marblehead Yacht Club, and the Dolphin Yacht Club are down here. But if you go ashore, Marblehead's a fun walking town. They're great old buildings, twisty, turny streets, and lots of fun things to do. And I do know that there's a couple of good ice cream shops in that town, so that's worth exploring. Marblehead can be a little roly-poly in the northeaster, and oftentimes they'll land you a mooring out at the mouth, which is probably the most exposed. It is the most exposed. But one thing that's really neat about Marblehead is the shoreline. It's just so beautiful. It's all great big rocks and really pretty. And you can walk out. There's a path that comes out right around here, comes down, and you can sit out on the rocks and enjoy a nice evening. Marblehead is known for the 4th of July lighting of the harbor that they do. Unfortunately, I'm told that this year it's been canceled, which is really too bad. It's a great way to use up your old flares. And it really was a pretty scene to take in. They decorate the lighthouse, obviously, in the background. And, and if you can sit on your boat and just enjoy it, it's wonderful. Getting over to Salem, excuse me. Derby Wharf. Salem has done they've made a big push. Russ knows this more than anybody. Russ Vickers, I saw you on the scene. Salem has done a really pretty good job at trying to expand its reputation beyond just being a witch city. And they've done a lot to fix up the waterfront. The Derby Wharf area is a good example of that. They fixed the pier. They've got the Friendship, the Salem Friendship is there now. She doesn't have a rig in yet, but there's been a big rebuild on that boat. The National Park Service is there. They've got a replica sail loft, a replica rope loft. So it's kind of a neat thing. And then, of course, walking around Salem, you can't avoid but the stuff about the witches and so on. In fact, if my family history is right, somewhere in my ancestry, I have a great, 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 great aunt of some sort, Martha Carrier, who was tried as a witch right at the end of the trials. She was found innocent, so they didn't stone her to death or anything like that, but she's mentioned. My sister's middle name is Carrier, and when she was little, she thought she was going to have to be a witch when she grew up. Up the coast, we come a little bit further, we get to Manchester. This is an aerial view from over the town part. You got Manchester Marine right over here, and Crocker's Boatyard is right behind it in the corner. Manchester is a very tight harbor, but there are moorings outside. Can be a little roly-poly, but they're good moorings. They're very good moorings. And if you're lucky, maybe you can score one on the inner harbor. But as I understand it this year, there's a slide coming up that I'll get to in a minute. If you're going to come in a skiff or something, there are a couple of little docks down at this end of the harbor that you can tie up to for a short moment. It's kind of funny, you know, I was talking to the harbor master down in Cohasset last week about how she was going to kind of uphold the law. And she laughed and she said, really? And she kind of let me know that it was going to be impossible to uphold the law. There were strong suggestions about docking and so on and so forth. And I think everybody gets the message. We have to socially distance and be careful, but the towns want visitors. And so it's worth, you know, taking a trip in. FYI, right underneath this tree here at the head of the harbor is Captain Dusty's ice cream, and that's really good. So that one scores high on the list. It's a good size cone. I recommend getting the kitty size because it's actually huge, but it's really tasty. They have lots of good mix-ins and so on and so forth. And of course, one of the fun things about Manchester is a train runs through it. So if you've got little kids on the boat, you can take them over to take them over and just get close to the railroad tracks and watch a train go by. There's something about trains that's just magical. And I know for little kids, it's kind of neat. So, you know, just these little things that you can do with kids. You can also take a skiff underneath the train deck, train bridge, and just explore this little tiny little cove in here. Not a lot to see. It does dry up at low tide. But for a young kid, it's just so much fun to explore around. And then, of course, in Manchester, you got beautiful houses to look at. Out here is Misery Island. Right in this area here is called Cocktail Cove, which can be a real crowd on a weekend. A lot of powerboats come out of Salem and Danvers and everywhere around, and they raft up, and it can be, frankly, it's not exactly what I enjoy, but that's just me. On the other hand, on the other side over here is a small cove, and there are a couple moorings over there that are really kind of fun to get into. And the cool thing about Misery, I discovered a few years ago, this is also great with kids because I happened to be with my kids on that day. We came ashore on the backside. We were poking around, and my son found an old rusty box and started to try and open it up. And I said, well, Ben, be careful. You don't know what might be in there. And he opened it up. Lo and behold, it was full of little knickknacks, maybe a Matchbox car. There was a little small notebook. There was a pen. There was maybe a little ceramic object in some sort. And in the notebook were written entries by people that had found the box. Now, so if anybody isn't familiar with this, there's a worldwide game called caching.com.
Geocaching.
Geocaching, yes. You know about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really pretty cool. And all over the world, no matter where you travel, you can look up your destination and see if there's a cache in place. I happen to know there's one actually behind my house here in Essex. We see people down there just scouring around in the woods down by the old mill. And it's really pretty cool. So there's a cache out on Misery Island. So if you got little kids and a handheld GPS, you can walk around and find it, put an entry in the journal, do the honest thing. You're allowed to take one thing out if you put one thing in. So it's really kind of a fun game, and it's all over the world. So no matter where you go, there's a game to play with your kids. Manchester Harbor, the famous little rotunda, where everybody in their high school class and weddings and so on get done, is a famous little spot. And of course, here's the yacht club. The ramp that goes to the dock from the rotunda is currently not functioning. They had a bad rot problem, so that's down and not being used. You can land at the dock, but you can't get from the dock to shore. And I don't know the schedule on getting that fixed, but I know they're under pressure. The harbor master put a posting out a week or so ago that that's being reviewed by the engineers and all that happy stuff. So something will be done and it'll get fixed up. But it's just part of the beauty of Manchester. And the Manchester Yacht Club people are very friendly. For water and so on, Manchester Marine back in the harbor is really the place to go. They've got a good dock. Talk to the dock master, and I've been in there a few times and pumped out, and and filled up. So it's definitely a worthwhile stop. And now we're up to Gloucester. This is, you know, one of my more favorite harbors for the following reason. It's a busy place. There's stuff going on there. There are great fishing boats that come in and out, and it's just an interesting town. It's also a very easy walk from the waterfront, from the dock by the Coast Guard station, right into town. And there are a lot of good restaurants and bars there. Again, the social distancing, I gotta believe that Main Street is I'll bet the restaurants are pushing to get that closed, or at least so they can bump out onto the sidewalks and have outdoor seating, because there's tons of space there, and the revenue they want, it's just, they want it. So about Gloucester Harbor a little bit, there's anchorage out here. I like to anchor right about here. I'm a big fan of anchoring. This is actually an open mooring area. You can rent a mooring from the harbor master if you want. It's great holding ground. You're right kind of in the center of things. You can come around the corner here to the artist colony, Rocky Neck. I think it's Rocky Neck. And there's some fun little restaurants right in back in there. So that's fun. The shipyard that's right here always has some big, interesting hulk sitting on the railways being worked on. That's kind of cool. Over in here is Brown's Yacht Yard if you need fuel. Good friendly guys there, happy to help you out. And of course, up in here is where the fish docks are, and all around here. Fishing boats anchored all around, docked all around, great spot. Right over here is the new great big hotel, which is a nice spot. They've got a beautiful deck if you want to go for a cocktail. This little blob here, a little hard to see, but that's where they do the Greasy Pole festival. And it's a pier, it's a set of pilings with almost a vertical timber that runs out from them. And they grease it up, and guys try and shinny from one end to the other. They invariably they run into the water, they fall into the water, which is pretty funny. This whole area will be full of anchored boats and people having a good time. 10 Pound Island, this was a spot behind which, right here, the British sat out here and bombarded Dogtown, Dogtown, Gloucester, before the Revolutionary War, because they knew the Gloucester fishermen were trying to find the ships that Britain was sending over with all the gunpowder and armaments. So the British hung out here and pounded the town and tried to just destroy it. They also, eventually, there's a great book called The Fish and the Falcon. And it was about the fishermen looking for a specific British ship called the Falcon. And one of the Gloucester fishermen found it, took it as a prize, brought it into Gloucester, took all the gunpowder and weaponry out of it. The local farmers showed up with their carts and ox and so on and so forth. They packed it all up overnight. They sent the captain off to Boston to see General Gage with an empty boat. And all the armaments went from here out to Concord and Lexington. So that's why the British were going after Concord and Lexington. It's kind of neat history to know. So Gloucester's got a lot of history. It's a neat harbor. The only thing about Gloucester that's a little rugged is Eastern Point. I don't know how many of you guys may have picked up a mooring out here, but it is quite possibly one of the roly-poliest anchorages that I've ever been in. Eastern Point Yacht Club is very pretty, nice spot. The jetty is a great walk. I think it's about a half mile or so from one end to the other. So it's a full mile round trip. The lighthouse and Gloucester Coast Guard station is right there. But one of the gems that I know of in Gloucester is Brace's Cove. It's about 6 feet deep, maybe a little more, all the way around at low tide. These breakers here break up the surf at low tide. If there's an easterly blowing, you don't want to be in there, because when the high tide comes in, it rolls right over those breakers and it gets very rocky in there. But as a midday sort of stopover, it's a great spot. It's shallow, the water gets pretty warm. And every time I've been in there, when people come through the cut, when you come in, stay right over here on the left side. You'll see some lobster pot buoys in there. New England navigation. If there's a pop buoy, there's 8 feet of water. Good thing to think about. So you come in along the left side, come around here, anywhere you want, drop your anchor. It's shallow, and people just quiet down. It's like being in a little cove in Maine. It's amazing. It's so beautiful. And then you can go up around the corner here if you want, and get further along to Rockport. But first, I want to point out, I like this picture because this shows some of what Gloucester is all about. This is the Ardell, which is a schooner built by a guy named Harold Burnham here in Essex. There are no metal fasteners holding that boat together. It's all built with wooden trunnels right on the marsh. It's a fabulous little boat. You can charter it or go on 2-hour cruises out of Gloucester. Behind it is a schooner Adventure, another boat that was built in Essex, 120 feet on the deck, I think. Big restoration went on that, and she's now sailing, which is good fun. And actually on Labor Day weekend, they have the Schooner Fest, which is a total blast to go watch. Blue Nose comes down from Canada. There's a new boat. Oh goodness, what's the name of it? It's a rebuild of another boat that was built in Essex. The name escapes me right now. Absolutely gorgeous schooner, 125 feet on the deck. And when they get going, they are something to see. So that's really, really fun to take in. And right from these boats right here, they're right on the dock. And so the walk to town is like 1 street away. So it's a great spot. Around Cape Ann, past Thatcher's Island and the Twin Lights is Rockport. And Rockport is a great little take. Call the harbor master. There are a couple of docks in the harbor that you can raft up to if there's space. The rate is very reasonable. Of course, motif number 1 is as famous as can be. Very peaceful, very quiet in the evening. And it's also actually a very nice little jumping off spot to the Isles of Shoals if you want to go up there. But honestly, the Isles of Shoals is north of Mass Bay, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. It's a neat place. I will talk about it because it was so unique. We got there mid-morning. The moorings there are maintained, and they are on a first-come, first-served basis up at the Isles of Shoals. Get your mooring. You are not allowed to take a skiff to the dock. You have to call the launch, which is fine. They just don't have enough room up there for everybody to bring in their skiff. The island is maintained by the Methodists. They rent it out for group meetings and so on. It's really pretty neat. There are beautiful paths around it. Other little out islands, which are great fun to poke around on. And it's just a super spot. But back to Rockport, because I think that's a neat town. Of course, Rockport has its little art colony and great little shops on shore within walking distance of the dock and the town pier. And it's really, really just a quaint little place. So it's worth taking in. The other thing about Rockport is the Shalu Theater. So to me, I've been in not a whole lot of music venues, but this place was built specifically for small musical events to go on. And the sound, the acoustics are just amazing. And you get great bands in there. I was in there one night and listened to 3 Spanish guitars playing reggae music. It was unforgettable. It was just an incredible scene. So we went up one night, set the spinnaker and left Salem, and went up past Thatcher's Island, in around, didn't stop in the harbor here, but we went around to the outer harbor over by Shalu Theater. We could see the concert going on. We couldn't hear anything. We just dropped the anchor right there. It was fabulous. This is a view of another view of the harbor from the other side. Here's the town dock I was talking about. Oh, and right over here in this area are the 2 finger piers that you can reserve and stay at. So it's very tight. It's very cute. You're within walking distance of everything. And of course, there are great little shops up in Rockport too. Annisquam River. If you haven't been through it, it's worth the ride, but do it at high tide. It gets very shallow in some places. The 128 bridge, which we see right here, is high enough for everybody to go under. The cut bridge, which is down at this end, well, first you got to go through the railroad bridge, and that is mostly open until the train comes. You might have to wait a little bit, but usually it moves pretty quick. And then beyond that, past the Cape Ann Marina, which is right here, is the cut bridge. And that's on demand. And on the weekend, it gets very, very busy. So it's, you know, you got to kind of wait your turn and go through. Outbound traffic is allowed to pass first, and then inbound traffic goes in. Supposedly, the Annisquam River Canal sees more boat traffic on a weekend than just about any other canal in the country. So that's how many boats go through there. It's great people watching. It's a lot of fun. So experiences on Mass Bay. I've talked about a lot of different harbors, but this is something else. You see a picture like this and you just have to wonder how marvelous it is. That's out at Stellwagen. I don't know who the people are on the boat. I don't know who took the picture, but it is, J.V. Braun has been out there. He's seen whales launching themselves out. I went out last year with my wife on the 4th of July. We left Gloucester and headed straight out, or maybe it was Manchester, I don't remember. We headed straight out. There wasn't a breath of wind. So we actually ended up motoring the whole way out. We went out to about, it was probably 25 miles out, and there wasn't a breath of wind. You could see the swirls and the eddies of the currents as they came up to the shallow areas of the bank. And the sad part, you guys, was there was a tremendous amount of trash. So Janet and I took the opportunity to actually, we did man overboard drills picking up trash. We got a 5-gallon can. We got, of course, a Mylar balloon that was out there. We got a Clorox bottle. So this is stuff we're all, you know, we all enjoy it, but if you see the trash, you got to pick it up. It's just awful. But the marine life that's out there is I can't wait to go and explore it some more. And a personal experience on a laser, because when I was a kid, I was a nutcase, and I used to sail on 210s in Cohasset with a fellow named Fritz Hoffman. I was a young punk, but I had a laser. I was probably 16. And there was a weekend when the racing had been called off, the 210 racing, because it was too rough and windy. The waves around Minot Lake were huge, and it was too rough to hold a race. So they called off the racing. What did I do? I put on my wetsuit and threw my laser in the water and headed out. I went out past Minot Light. I went out to Flat Ledge, which is even further out. It was great fun. I was having so much fun. And I bore off and headed down toward Boston. I had done this a few times before, so it was no big deal. But it was really hooting that day, and I crashed. And there I was out in the middle of the North Atlantic, and the boat turtled, which isn't usually a problem. So I climbed up on the hull and went to grab the centerboard so I could right the boat, and the centerboard slipped through the hull. So now there was no centerboard to climb on. So I had to go under the boat again while it's upside down, pull the centerboard out inside out, go up on the boat upside down, put the centerboard in, flip the boat upright, dive under the boat again, pull the centerboard out, and try and get it up on the deck and into the centerboard trunk before the boat capsized again, which it did. And I knew I was drifting down on the ledges, so I was a little worried. And but no, on the third try, it actually worked. I was quick enough, but then I got going, and I took off up toward Graves Light, surfing these massive waves. God, I was having so much fun. And then I turned the corner and beam reached back along the shore all the way along Nantasket Beach and Black Rock Beach and Cohasset, Sandy Beach. And then I came flying down the channel into Cohasset and back to my nest. It was such a blast. So I've had some great experiences, and I hope that I've inspired some of you guys to get your boats in the water and get out there and go sailing, find some boats to go on and have fun on the water. That's what we have our boats for, and that's what it's all about. I'm happy to entertain any questions for you guys, but I think on the webinar here, we can't really do that. Chris, I'll leave that up to you. But I can be reached by email at this location at North Sails. I'm on it all the time. I'm very lucky. I've been able to play in this game a long, long time, and happy to help anybody any way I can with their boat ideas about what might be fun to do on their boat, places to go, and stuff like that. And at some point, maybe I'll do one of these on Maine, because I've spent a lot of time up there sailing too. I love Maine. That's it for me, you guys. Thanks for attending.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you. It was fun.
Thank you, Brad. Very nice.
Thank you, Brad.
Does anybody have any tips or places
Brad, is your boat in Essex or where is it?
Last Bay or experiences you want to share while we're online? My boat?
Yeah.
I keep my boat in Salem because boatyard is right there. My sail loft is at Dion's, and I have a little skiff at the dock. So it's kind of a sweet setup. I'm very lucky. I picked up my Pearson 33 about 4 years ago, and it was a guy I'd known. I actually built the sails. Oh boy, in 1988 when the boat was new, I built the sails for it, and I kind of called the guy up and I said, "How much you want for it?" And he said, "How much is it worth?" And I said nothing. And so he sold it to me for a very nice price, and it was a big fix-up. It was kind of a wreck, but it had good bones, and I knew the only two mechanics that ever touched the engine. They gave it a good bill of health, so I said this is a worthwhile gamble, and we've had tons of fun on it. So I do a little bit of racing now, mostly up in Maine. It's more casual on classic design boats, and but boy, I enjoy the cruising. I love sunset. I love sunrise. My wife talks about how great it is to have coffee in the cockpit, kind of motoring slowly out of a quiet harbor. I love the sounds of the fishermen getting going in the morning. Yeah, it's really special. We're all really lucky, and I know I appreciate it, as I'm sure you do too. Any questions? Pretty quiet crowd. All right, well, send me emails if you guys are shy and you just want to do it through that or whatever. I'm happy to answer them, and let's get out on the water and go sailing. Enjoy the summer.
Where do you race up in Maine, Brad?
I've been racing mostly out of Blue Hill Bay on a boat, Eggemoggin 47. I've done the Camden Classic on a custom Stevens Waring 68-foot Spirit of Tradition boat. I've got a new Taylor 50 that's being launched the end of July. Customer that I'm going to do the Eggemoggin with those guys. They're doing an informal race. There will be no social events before or after, which is, as we know, it's a social sport. We like to get together with our buddies and throw out stories and stuff like that. So this year is going to be a little different. But I also know that there are people working on kind of getting back to grassroots fun sailing with families and destination races instead of these windward leeward kind of races. Destination races, like there's the Behringer race that runs from Marblehead to Provincetown. There's the Lambert Ocean race. I think that's Marblehead to Marblehead, but they're talking about making that a destination race. To me, part of the fun is start someplace, go to another one, get your mooring and drop your anchor, spend the night on the boat. I love to cook on the boat. I love to sit there and read and snooze. It's just, I'm so lucky. So.
How is business, Brad? How's the sail business now?
Well, like so many that rely on disposable income, it's pretty tight. But it's coming back. I've had a very, very busy week with inquiries, and actually sold a number of sales just in the last 3 days. So, but it's people that are, it's not a lot of the highfalutin racing stuff. That's not going, not in our neighborhood. But the people that are looking for a good solid cruising sail, we've got some pretty neat things going on there, and so I try and aim them in the right direction, and hopefully we can help them out.
Was it the schooner Columbia you were trying to remember?
Yes, Columbia. Thank you very much. Yeah, isn't that a pretty boat?
Yeah, beautiful.
So I actually, you can see in the background, I build models, and in the background, in the center is Atlantic, which was a 200-foot schooner, and that had the transatlantic record for a long time. When Columbia was here for the schooner races, I took a lot of pictures and hope to eventually scale them out and start building a home, which would be really, really pretty. I'd like to take that, build the home, make a half model out of it, and put it over my front door. I think it'd be neat.
We have a picture of Columbia in the pelagic calendar from last year's schooner race.
Oh, neat. Yeah, that's a great take, isn't it? The schooner race is just so, and even the parade around the harbor in the morning is pretty cool.
Hey, Brad, refresh us on what is opening for right now for cruising if we go to, Marblehead, Salem, Beverly, Manchester, Gloucester, those
Well,
places. Situate.
what I do know is this. I think you can pick up a mooring just about anywhere. You need to talk to the harbor master about the availability. That's kind of standard. That's the way it's been. The harbor masters will not let you raft up, as far as I know. Now, that said, in Cohasset, Lori Gibbons said she wasn't going to enforce a whole lot of anything. We'll see how that goes. I think that the harbor masters have been giving an onerous job. And, there are bigger issues in the world, really. I think we all know well enough to be careful. We've all done a lot of self-quarantining. And I know myself, when I go to some store, a supermarket or Home Depot, I've got a mask on. The protocol, I went to my dentist this morning, and the protocol in the dentist office is incredible. You just wear your mask. It's a little heartbreaking to hear that there are parts of our country that didn't kind of get it, and they're seeing resurgence. This is a dangerous situation, and I know I've got a 93-year-old father and a 90-year-old mother-in-law, so I'm careful. But going on your boat with people you trust have been very careful. What we don't know about is, you go fill your car up with gas. Who touched the pump before you? Things like that. That's where it gets a little scary. Most all of the racing that I know of in Mass Bay has been told no. They don't want to see any organized. I understand the Marblehead Harbor Master broke up an organized laser kind of race last weekend, I think it was. So they are watching, and they don't want to see a lot of organized stuff going on. But if it just kind of appears, like I think the Camden Classic race up in Maine is going to just kind of get on the radio in the morning and say, hey, anybody who's interested, we're meeting out at Camp 3 off of Sheep's Island, and we're going to race around Hog Island, and we're going to go over to this and that, and we're going to come back and just have a fun race, and we'll all get together next year. So that's sort of what's going on. I don't know specifics in any harbor. And I think it's going to be very liquid situation depending on the harbor you're going to and the mood of the harbor master. And I think a lot of that depends on how they get treated, So it's, but you're not going to go into a harbor, and if you've made arrangements, you're not going to go into a harbor and get turned away. I doubt it. You may not get launch service, which I don't blame them for. They're going to save. Imagine the yacht clubs and how they're going to try and deal with launch service. I was talking to the Commodore of Annisquam Yacht Club today. He's just shaking his head. He's going, oh, this is so difficult. Everybody's got a question, and everybody's trying to get their way. And these guys, to a certain extent, have to uphold it, because then you bring in the whole liability issue. I caught it at the yacht club, or I caught it at the golf club, or I caught it, you know what I mean? So there is still sailing to be done, and I know I'm going to be doing it. I'm going to drag my skiff around with me and enjoy the water.
It's Brian. If I could just give a quick comment here. In the last 4 or 5 days, we've been doing some sailing. Marion Burr Brothers is open. They're running the launches. Went down to Cuddy Hunk. Mooring situation is, as always, they're running the raw bar. Went into Scituate, grabbed a mooring, rode in. We were all wearing masks through all of this.
Yeah.
Other than that. And then in Hull Yacht Club's open, and they got some distancing and masks. Yeah. The launches are running. So those are the only places I've been, the 4 places I've been so far. But there's some wrinkles. But in terms of, can you go sailing and have fun and grab a mooring and go in? Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's good, Brian. That's good to hear. And doesn't surprise me either, because these harbor masters aren't there to break your head. They're going to help you out, especially if you show up as the sun is going down. I know when I was younger, I drove around the country with a couple of buddies in a van, and we figured out that if we got to the national parks after 5 o'clock. The Rangers had gone home. So we just pull up the van to any old spot. We camped in a beautiful spot on Yosemite that wasn't a real site. Great spot in Glacier and places like that. But we get up early and leave before the Rangers showed up. So it's kind of the same thing with the harbor masters. And but you go in a harbor, they're not going to tell you to leave. That's not the nature of the sport. So I think we'll find. And like you said, Brian, you went in, you had a mask on, you showed respect, and you were following the rules. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, I understand in Maine, and I think somebody mentioned this earlier, but the governor is going to open up Maine on July 1st. And if you come up there with a letter that says that you were tested and you're negative, then hallelujah. But if you come up there and you don't have a letter, then you have to self-quarantine. Well, we're already self-quarantined on our boats, pretty much. And so if you pull into a harbor, they may not want you to go ashore and have dinner at that restaurant. And that's kind of understandable. But I can tell you this, because I've been up there delivering sales. The boatyards themselves that I'm in and out of are all very good about masks and distancing. The further inland you get, away from the water, the less people are following the rules. I had to go into a Meineke shop in Augusta, and they looked at me like I was, weird because I had a mask on. So it seems to be the waterfront. The guys are being pretty careful. They're all being pretty careful. Going to Dion's Yacht Yard in Salem, they're all wearing masks. And they ask you to wear a mask too. Not too much to do. Masks are going to become like socks. You wake up in the morning, you take a new pair of socks out of the drawer, and you take a new mask out. That's what it's going to be. What color am I wearing today? Where are you headed to next, Brian?
We're doing the solstice cruise. So actually, if we have more time, I'm curious about your comments on Clark Island, because I understand the delights of Plymouth, but I hate powering in and out. And when I can get away with it, I anchor off stake, which can be a little dicey. So
Yeah.
The Clark's Island, you just anchor on what would that be, the northeast
The
side?
north side is the deep side, I'm pretty sure. It's been a while since I was there. I was a
And the
kid when I
holding's
was
good?
there.
Yeah.
What's that?
I'm sorry, the holding is good?
Yeah. I mean, Jack Slattery told me that the New York Yacht Club parked in there one night. So, it's got to be pretty good. Of course, those guys probably have big anchors anyway, but that was a long time ago when I was there, so I don't remember a whole lot, but it's a privately owned place. You can arrange a tour. There's some historical markers there, and just as a way, again, kind of emphasizing the kids. If you got kids or grandkids that you want to take to a place, it's a little different. The exploration, I remember when I was a kid down the Cape, we actually had a power boat. And when I was a kid on the Cape, taking the skiff ashore in any harbor and just kicking around the sand and the beaches and getting chased by people saying, get off my property kind of thing and all that stuff. And we never did anything malicious, but we were just exploring around. And it was endless. It was an endless playground. Every harbor was a little different. So if we can get people out to do that, and you don't have to be a kid either. I mean, how much fun is it just to walk on the seashore, just even at our age, at 62 or whatever? I mean, I like it. It doesn't matter where I am. So that's good. The solstice, that's good fun. I'm actually going tomorrow evening. I'm going up to Manchester, pick a few friends up off of some dock. We haven't figured that out yet, and go out for an evening cruise. And then we'll get back to mooring I've arranged for and cook on the boat. And then I'll kick those people off the boat. Waking up on a boat's a good thing.
Where do you stay in Manchester?
I arranged the mooring through Skip Crocker at Crocker's Boatyard. I got a friend.
You're inside.
I got a friend in the business. I think that the best avenue is to check in with the harbor master. I'd have no problem anchoring off of Misery. If the cool thing today, you guys, is that the weather reporting is so much more accurate than it ever was. So you can look at places to go and figure, well, the front is supposed to come through and then blow out of the northwest pretty late through the night, and then tomorrow morning it's going to pick up northwest. We'll have that typical dry northwesterly that's kind of neat. And so I can duck in here to Races Cove northwester, that's a perfect spot. But if there's going to be an easterly, a low easterly or something coming in, or maybe we've had, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I've been watching the weather and we've had a strange set of dry easterlies the last couple of 3 years. They're these easterlies that come up, they're not thermals. This is a real pressure system, and there's no rain with them, right? It used to be that you'd get a northeaster, it was 2 or 3 days, and it would rain and be kind of crummy and snotty, and it would go away. And then you'd have a southwester. And if it got hot enough, the southwester would heat up the land, and then you get a sea breeze.
Yeah, it's funny, in Boston Harbor, I'm finding that there are a lot of easterlies with fair weather blowing right out of the east.
Right, right. Didn't used to do that because those are system breezes. They're not thermals. The thermal starts with a southwester early in the morning. So it's climate change. I'm convinced of it. Pretty different. Well, guys, I'm going to run. Thanks very much. Good fun. Chris, I appreciate it. I really thank you for helping put this together. And I actually pushed some of the right buttons and we were able to present. So that's a good thing.
Thank you, Brad, for your presentation. I know that I learned a good bit about a bunch of places and the perspective on where to go and some things to see. Hopefully that gets some people this summer and summer in the future out and checking out some new spots.
Great. And if you need a mission, the mission is to find the best ice cream in Mass Bay.
All for
Hey,
that.
guys.
Thank you,
very
Hey,
Brad.
much.
Brad.
Yep. Have a good evening. Thanks for attending. Great fun.
Thanks, Brad.